Carolyn, here we are at Arcadia.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it just gorgeous? The house back there is just something really everybody should see. As a matter of fact, I believe that they shot, what is it, the movie
Raintree County, I believe,
was
with Elizabeth Taylor.
right here at this spot.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we'd come over here today and we're going to talk about Isaac Shelby and his second term as governor, but we thought this was such a beautiful place we'd come over here. This was the home of Isaac Shelby Jr. It was built in 1836. The original bricks were made right here on this place, and actually, you know, Carolyn, Isaac Shelby Jr. was about the seventh son of Governor Isaac Shelby. Yes. And he married a lady by the name of, I believe it was Marie Warren, and which was a sister of his brother's wife. Her name was Nancy Warren.
Oh.
So I believe it was Evans, who was a son of Isaac Shelby.
Okay.
Is that right?
It
now?
gets confusing, doesn't it?
There's so many Evanses and
Right.
so many Isaac Shelbys, but I believe I'm correct in saying that Evan, I guess he'd be about the third. He married a girl by the name of Nancy Warren, and Isaac Shelby Jr. married a girl by the name of Marie Warren. I think I'm correct. So those two brothers married sisters.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that happens so many times in days gone by. You know, they had large families. 10 or 11 children in a family was not unusual. And I guess probably because of transportation, you just naturally...
You didn't get out to meet many people out of your neighborhood.
That's right.
Right.
You know, my wife came from Mount Sterling. Well, that'd be a long way.
To journey back then, yeah.
Back then, that's right.
Well, I wonder how long it took to build this house.
It took 10 years to build this house, and there are some stones that we want to see a little bit later that say, one stone says 1836, shows when it was born, and another stone, I believe, says Isaac Shelby Jr., 1836, and it is a beautiful place. It's now owned, I think we should say this, it's owned by some people from Italy. And they come over here and they use this sort of as a second home. They still live in Italy, but they come over here. They're interested in horses, as I understand. So it just makes an awful nice extra home, so to speak.
Right. Well, now the Shelbys, the actual Shelby family lived here until what, about what year?
Yeah, until early 1960s. And at that time, they had an auction to finally sell the house. And the last Shelbys to live here was Isaac Shelby IV and his sister, and her name was Florence Shelby. And then there was a nephew, I believe, and his name was Shelby Steele. I believe that's correct. And I guess they finally got to the point that, you know, this is almost like a plantation, so to speak.
Right.
And I guess they probably felt like that it was time to sell, and probably none of the other descendants probably were interested in it at that time.
I see. Well, it certainly is a beautiful place, and I appreciate the people letting us come here and do this taping so we can share it with all of our viewers.
Yes, you know, as a matter of fact, I believe they said the mother of the person that owns it
is here from
is
Italy.
here, and we saw her a few minutes ago, and she was a most gracious lady.
Right.
And we enjoyed seeing her. I thought maybe today we'd sort of talk about Governor Shelby's second term in office. You know, he thought that he was going to live quietly over there at Travelers Rest the rest of his days, but with the imminence of war with Great Britain in 1812, a lot of people got after him and urged him to run for governor of Kentucky again. And he was very reluctant at first, and as a matter of fact, Gabriel Slaughter came to see him, and Gabriel Slaughter was a neighbor. And he asked Governor Shelby, he said, "Are you going to run?" A lot of people say you're going to run. Are you going to run? And Shelby at first says, "No, I don't think I'm going to run for governor." He loved it out there at Travelers Rest, you know. But as 1812 rolled along, why, it looked like they were going to have war with Great Britain again, and so the people urged him to run, so you might say almost at the last minute why he condescended to run for governor. And in the race for governor, why, his military record, of course, at Kings Mountain and again in Lord Dunsmore's war, probably had a lot to do with it, you know.
They wanted his expertise.
They wanted his expertise in the war, and of course he had had experience as a governor before, so they felt comfortable about having Shelby run again. And as a result, why, Governor Isaac Shelby defeated Gabriel Slaughter about 29,000 votes to, I think that Gabriel only got about 11,900 votes. So he did have a convincing victory and a majority at that time. And also, shortly after that, why, the disastrous defeat of the Kentuckians, which was called the Battle of the River Raisin. Oh, it was absolutely terrible, Carolyn. So many of our men, Kentuckians, they were mostly Kentuckians up there close to Detroit again, and they were defeated. So many of them were scalped, so many of them were killed, and so many of them were left out on the ground without any burial or anything. And that's another story. I'm getting ahead of my story, so I'll go ahead and get back a little bit. He said, Shelby said that he thought there wasn't sufficient planning when they got into the Battle of the River Raisin. And he said that if he ever got an operatunity, why, he would do his own thing.
Handle things differently.
Handle things differently. So his chance came midways of 1813 when he got a cable, or word, I guess I better say, a word from General William Henry Harrison. And he urged Shelby to come to his aid and bring a lot of Kentuckians with him. But he says, "I want Shelby, we want you to lead the men." And remember, he was governor at that time. So Shelby called for 2,000 volunteers to meet him at Newport, Kentucky, and in about 30 days. And at the end of the 30 days, there wasn't 2,000, there was 4,000.
Hey, marvelous.
4,000 Kentuckians showed up with their own rifles, their own horses, ready to go. Isn't that something that they had that many?
Super, yes, great turnout. And how old was Isaac Shelby now at this time when he was actually leading this group of volunteers?
63. You see, he was governor the first time when he was 41. You know, he was inaugurated.
So when most men are getting ready to retire, here he is leading a group of 4,000 men into war.
That's correct. That's correct.
Remarkable.
So before I get into the further story about the War of 1812, let me tell you a little tidbit I think that you would enjoy so much. It just so happened that one regiment that was going to meet Shelby up at Newport, they started from Harrodsburg, a group of men, volunteers with their own horses and so forth. Well, just on the outside of Harrodsburg, they saw two pigs fighting. This is a true story. There were two pigs fighting. So they stopped to watch
the pig fight.
The pig fight. So when the battle between the two pigs were over, why, the victorious pig sort of started to follow.
Follow our Kentuckians?
Our Kentuckians. And he did. He followed them right on their flank. This pig followed them all the way to the Ohio River at Newport.
Oh, my goodness.
When they got to Newport, why, the men got on a boat to cross the river. It's a real wide at Newport, Kentucky, the Ohio is. Well, the pig, he hesitated for a while. First thing you know, don't you know, this pig jumping into the water, and he swam across the river, and the first thing you knew it, you knew he was on the flank again of these marching men. So what happened was the men sort of took up with this pig, and even though some of their rations were short, they fed the pig.
Instead of having a pig roast, they were feeding him their food.
And they wouldn't think of cutting that pig's throat. And that pig followed them all the way up till they got to the lake area up there close to Detroit. And finally, as they got ready to cross over into Canada, the pig hesitated. He thought, well, I don't believe I want to try that lake. You know? So he stopped there. So after the war was over, and we didn't, and I'll tell you more about the story of the Battle of the Thames, but I think I should finish maybe the story of the pig. When the men were victorious and they again recrossed back into the United States, well, it was the United States, it was the Northwest Territory, they called it at that time. There was a pig.
Waiting for them.
Waiting for them on the...
A devoted pig, I'd say.
A devoted pig. So it was real cold. See, this was in late October. But that pig followed them all the way back till they got to the Ohio River again at Maysville. They were going to cross at Maysville this time. But it was so cold coming back to Maysville, the pig got a little bit sick. So when they got to Maysville, they turned the pig over to a farmer there to take care of till the summertime to get him well and so forth. Don't you know, when summertime came, that pig got well, and they finally got the pig, they delivered the pig back to Governor Isaac Shelby at Travelers Rest, and he took good care of the pig the rest of his life, and the pig then rested in ease.
Oh, what a remarkable story. You don't normally think of a pig doing something like that. Maybe a dog. Dog is usually devoted, but you don't think of a pig being that devoted. Oh.
That's right. This was a pig. And they say that's a true story.
Documented story.
Documented story. That's right.
Very interesting.
Getting back to the Battle of 1812 and the Battle of the Thames, which was a deciding factor. Why, again, Shelby's men were up there close to, actually in Canada, I may say. And they had a terrible time with a fellow, I believe his name was Proctor, was one of the generals. But anyway, once again, Shelby makes a flanking move and got behind, and they defeated the British at the Battle of the Thames. Also, I might add that at the Battle of the Thames, Richard M. Johnson, and he was from Georgetown, Kentucky, he is the one that is said to have, he slew the great Chief Tecumseh at the Battle of the Thames. Now, Richard M. Johnson, he was also later became the Vice President of the United States. And I think this is important if I would inject this just a little bit. He's the only man to ever be elected Vice President by the United States Senate. You know what happened? Why did that happen?
No.
In the Electoral College, Richard M. Johnson, running for Vice President, he had a certain number of votes. He had 3 or 4 opponents. I think he had 137 electoral votes. All of his opponents had 137 electoral votes.
Oh.
So it was a tie in the Electoral College. So the law at that time was, if there was a tie in the Electoral College for Vice President, then the decision was thrown over into the Senate. And General Jackson helped Richard M. Johnson. Richard M. Johnson was a friend of Jackson. So Richard M. Johnson was helped by General Jackson, and he was elected as Vice President of the United States, the only one to ever be elected by the Senate. I might have to take that back a little bit. I guess that President Ford probably was elected maybe by the House or the Senate. I've forgotten just exactly which.
How that went after Nixon stepped down.
Yeah, but at least up until that time, nobody else had ever been elected Vice President of the United States by the Senate. Now, I guess I better get back to the Battle of the Thames. As I have said, General William Henry Harrison, he was delighted to have Shelby join him in the battle. And they defeated the British at the Battle of the Thames on October the 15th. 1813, I believe, was the date, as a matter of fact.
Right.
And after the War of 1812, at 69 years of age, why, Governor Shelby's health began to deteriorate, so to speak. It was too bad. He had trouble walking, and they finally, Dr. McDowell gave him a lot of mercury shots to help him. Dr. McDowell told him he should stay in, but he wouldn't hear anything of that. And he hobbled around Travelers Rest over there on silver-headed canes, so to speak. And many people came by to see him, of course, during this period. And he was, again, he was urged for public office. He was urged to run for the United States Senate. And, of course, he had many things to do there. And finally, in 1820, why, he had a stroke. And it crippled his right arm and his right leg. And he had a terrible time. But he finally learned how to write a little bit by his left hand. You know, I think we should bring up the part that actually Isaac was most generous. He actually willed Travelers Rest and all its furnishings to his wife, with the stipulation that everything passed to Alfred, and that was their youngest, on her death. But actually, Alfred never did receive legally any of the property because he died, I believe it was on December the 1st, 1832. Is that correct?
That's
I think?
correct,
And he preceded his mother in death by only a very few months. But
what happened to him?
He was died in a hunting accident, which was sort of sad again, another sad thing that happened. So many sad things happened to the Shelby family.
Well, he was a young man, wasn't he, at that time?
Oh,
28?
28 years old. See, he was the last child
that they had.
That they had. But I thought that one thing that was significant in Isaac Shelby's will that I thought that we would bring out was the fact that he had a daughter, I believe her name was Letitia, and she married a fellow by the name of Charles Todd. Now, Charles Todd was a fine man as far as a politician was concerned, but evidently he was a very poor businessman. He didn't know how to handle his money, because in the will, he willed 500 acres on Fox Run, which is in Shelby County, to Letitia, but in trust, for her use only during her lifetime, so that Todd was not to get any part of it. And also in the trust, the trustee was James Shelby, an older brother, because Isaac Shelby knew that James didn't think too much of Charles Todd.
Oh, okay, so he was taking care of his daughter.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But
well, I wonder why he didn't care much for Todd.
Well, I think one of the reasons that he didn't care much for Todd is the fact that he had given him 2 large pieces of land on their wedding day. Well, Charles Todd, he sold part of the land, and Isaac Shelby didn't like that at all, selling something that he had given to them as a wedding present.
Right.
Also, he exonerated in the will, this fellow Charles Todd had actually borrowed a considerable amount of money from him. I believe it was about $6,909.90 plus interest. So he exonerated that. So that was not an obligation that Todd was to make back. Well, actually, I think he did it for his daughter, Letitia, don't you?
Right, I think so too.
I think so.
A good papa looking out for daughters.
And Letitia, actually, she went on, I believe, to Owensboro, wasn't it? And she lived until she was about 70 years old.
Right, right.
And, Shelby, he attended the Presbyterian Church in Danville. But, he was quite a religious man, and he built a non-denominational church right there on his grounds near Travelers Rest so that anybody could come and worship. And I thought that was something that was real nice for him to do. And
how did Isaac Shelby actually die then?
Well, Shelby didn't want any big funeral. He just wanted mainly his wife and close friends. Not friends, but close relatives. Yeah, family, that's right. And on the last day of his life, which was in July the 20, let's see, I believe it was July the 18th, 1826. On the last day of his life, why, he walked all around, he hobbled around Travelers Rest, and he came back to sit on the porch with his wife. And all of a sudden, he made a sigh and fell over and was dead. He had a blood vessel that broke in his head. Yes, but it was the way he wanted to die. He wanted to die quick, like that, and not cause any disturbance, and he didn't want people around him. He didn't want to go into the hospital. This is the way he wanted to go, so this is the way he did go.
So he's buried over at the cemetery?
Yes, from here we're going to go to the little cemetery, and we'll see the grave of Isaac Shelby and his wife, and a lot of grandchildren are buried over there. And Isaac Shelby, when he died, why, they had all kind of eulogies for him, and people coming to see him, and very notable man, of course, because so many people, not only in the state but in the nation, knew of Isaac Shelby, because he had come to the wilderness, actually, when it was filled with copper-colored dangers of both snakes and Indians.
Right.
You think of those rattlesnakes that are sort of copperhead, I believe is the name of one of them, isn't it? So yes.
He had seen all the dangers, and he was one of Kentucky's oldest heroes, and I'm sure everybody hated to lose him.
Hated to lose him, and I think this is important, Carolyn, just to think how well off people felt about Isaac Shelby. They adored him. Is the fact that cities and counties in 9 states were named for Isaac Shelby.
They all admired him, not just Kentuckians.
Isn't that marvelous for them to do something like that? Of course, I believe it was in about 1826, I believe President Monroe asked him to serve as Secretary of War, wasn't it? I believe it was Monroe.
Monroe had asked him to. I'm not sure of the year, but I know Monroe had asked him to.
Well, it was in the early 1800s that he asked him to be the Secretary of War. And he declined on account of his age. But however, the very next year, I believe it was 1827 or thereabouts, why General Andrew Jackson and Isaac Shelby were commissioned to go down and try to make a treaty with the Chickasaws down in far western Kentucky. And when they got down there, why, they had many conferences with the Indian chiefs there. Because the colonies wanted to purchase the land. Well, it so happened that they finally got up to about $20,000 a year for about 20 years that they wanted to purchase, and it looked like they were about to make a deal. And Thomas Hart Shelby, one of his sons, had gone along with him, and Shelby got upset because Andrew Jackson wanted to give, the Indians wanted another year of $20,000. Isaac Shelby thought the deal had been made, and he didn't like that, and he was about to walk away. But Thomas Hart Shelby stepped in between his father and Andrew Jackson, and they came to a compromise. And that area is now known as the Purchase area of Kentucky.
Jackson Purchase there.
The Jackson Purchase is correct.
Okay.
So there were many people that adored our friend Isaac Shelby. He was on the board, I believe, of Transylvania for a short time, and then he was the chairman of the board of Center College when it was founded in 1819. So he was also very interested in education, as you can see.
Very active man.
That's right. And when he died in 1826, I guess that was about the date. And I guess I better back up a little bit about the Jackson Purchase, because it probably was a few years before that time.
I think it was like 1817, something
I
like
believe
that.
you're right. I think that's right. Thank you for helping me. Yes, it was 1817. But Shelby, of course, died in 1826. And he was very active and had an honorable career, and as a soldier and a statesman, in the fact that his being a hero of 3 wars and a member of the Constitutional Convention and twice elected governor of the great state of Kentucky.
A fine man. And he even died the same year as Thomas Jefferson and Adams, too.
That's right. The headlines in the paper at that time were Jefferson, Adams, and Shelby are no more.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very sad, but a very impressive
Very
man.
impressive.
He did a lot for our state.
They did.
I
I
wish-
think from here, I believe we ought to go to the cemetery.
Okay. I wish all of our viewers could see this place because
Oh.
it is just lovely.
I
And-
tell you, my wife would love to see the flowers and everything here. You know.
Well, it's just such a peaceful feeling.
Oh, isn't it though?
It's very, very nice.
Go to the cemetery.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, let's go. Well, Carolyn, here we are at Isaac Shelby Graveyard. You know, it was enclosed in 1820. It's a beautiful place, isn't it?
It is very pretty.
So many of Isaac Shelby's grandchildren are also buried here. I don't believe we said, you know, he had 60 grandchildren.
Large family.
Large family. And of course, here is the grave and the stone of Isaac Shelby, who was born, of course, in December the 11th, 1750, and of course he died on July the 18th, 1826. He was the first governor, of course, of Kentucky when Kentucky became a state in June the 1st, 1792. He was sworn in that day. This is a beautiful monument, and I think you have something that you would like to say about the state erecting this monument.
Well, I believe in 1827, when Joseph Desha was governor of Kentucky, they decided they wanted to do something for Isaac Shelby since he had done so much for our state. And they came down, they erected this monument, and the state of Kentucky, Commonwealth of Kentucky, paid for it. So I think that's a fine tribute, don't you?
I think it was well worthwhile and well deserving.
Right. And over here we have...
This is the grave, of course, of Susanna Hart Shelby, who was the wife of Isaac Shelby. And she outlived Shelby by several years. Of course, he died in 26, and she passed away in 1833. And she died just a few months after their youngest son, Alfred. You know, Alfred passed away when he was just 28 years old. I believe he passed away in 1832, and Susanna Hart died just several months later in 1833.
Okay, and who do we have over here, Mayor Sower? I believe this was a grandson.
Yes, I believe this is a grandson. It's hard to see any kind of mark on the grave, actually, but this little boy, I believe, is the one that and he died because he was running with a stick in his mouth.
Isaac Shelby Nelson was his name, I believe.
It's a shame, but he had a stick in his mouth, and he fell, and the stick, of course, tore up his throat, and he died, and he was only 3 years old.
What a shame.
Just a little fella.
And
yeah.
I guess back then, medically, they couldn't do anything for him, and I guess that was...
the moral to that story...
Don't run with the stick in your mouth.
Right.
And let's see, I believe we have another grandchild over here somewhere, a little McDowell grandson.
Oh, yes.
The date is totally obliterated. You can't tell the date on that.
But this is Isaac Shelby McDowell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a terrible thing that happened to this one. He was suffocated because he tried to swallow a wheat spear, and they couldn't get it out. Of course, this day and time, they probably could have rushed him to the hospital and probably operated, had a tracheotomy. Is that the way you pronounce that?
I believe so.
And they probably could have saved the little fellow, but they couldn't get it out, and he died. And again, he was, I think he was 3 years old, or approximately.
I would like to see the grave of Alfred, the one who was killed in the hunting accident. You think we could go over there?
The youngest son.
The Isaac's youngest son, Alfred, that was supposed to inherit Traveler's Rest, right?
Yes, he was supposed to, but as I've said before, you know, legally he did not actually become the owner of Traveler's Rest,
Right.
because he died in the hunting accident before.
Even before his mother died, and this is his grave site.
This is the grave site of the youngest of all of the children of Isaac Shelby, and I believe I said before, I believe he had 11. Isn't that correct?
11 children.
11 children.
But you can't even make out the writing on this grave.
I guess maybe if we'd have brought a piece of chalk, you know, if you bring a little piece of white chalk with you, then it brings out
the engravings.
The engraving better, but I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to do anything to the stones. These people over here have been so nice to us.
You don't want to mess it up.
I don't want to mess it up, but there is one stone over here, I think, that you'd probably be glad to see, and it's one that it's a sad note, really, because I want you to look at this stone. And, of course, these are the children of Susanna Preston Shelby and John Warren Grigsby. And I want you to notice the dates in particular here. Of course, the first one died on December the 27th, 1860. But look at I want you to pay particular attention to the dates of the last four. Alfred Shelby died October 1862. Susan Shelby, October 1862. Mary Shelby, or Ashley, October 1862. Letitia Wallace, October 1862. And as I understand, those four all passed away because they had diphtheria, and they all died within a week of each other. And
what a tragedy.
Oh, what a tragedy. It's just a shame. The parents and their children who lived to maturity are buried in the Lexington, Kentucky cemetery. Virginia Shelby, Hart Preston, and Louisiana Grigsby Arkell. And it was, this stone is the best stone here in the cemetery outside of Governor Shelby and Susanna Hart maybe. But it was erected by the surviving child, Susanna Preston Shelby Grigsby, and was 1953. She must have been a little old at that time, maybe.
Right.
Not as old as I am. Well, I tell you, it's been awful nice in the cemetery, and I'm sorry we don't really know the grave sites of some of these people here, but in the old days, so often they just put up what was called a field stone, you know. And but some of these probably have engraving on them at one time.
Right.
But as you can see, some of them are in poor shape, but there are some others that have been reconstructed, and it's holy ground.
Right.
It's holy ground.
I do want to make comment on these the fences. Oh, I think they're just beautiful. The rock fence.
Yes, it was reconstructed by the state of Kentucky, I believe. I'm not positive about that, but it seems like to me when they decided that they would take over this as an historic site, I believe I'm correct in stating that they sort of refurbished the stone wall.
It's neatly done, very well kept.
Excellent. Yeah. You know, Carolyn, one thing about this place, it's a beautiful cemetery. There's no question about it. But you know, the state of Kentucky wanted to bring Isaac Shelby and his wife, Susanna Hart Shelby, to Frankfort, Kentucky. You know, we have 16 governors buried in the Frankfort Cemetery. And the state actually owns a portion way back in the cemetery. And in that area, they have quite a few of the governors of Kentucky buried there. One of the oldest, I believe I'm correct, is Charles Scott, who was the third or fourth governor. He's buried there. He was actually interred out at Belvedere, I believe, the old cemetery out at Thorn Hill.
Oh.
But he was brought to the Frankfort Cemetery. And actually, Isaac Shelby's family didn't want Isaac Shelby moved. They felt like, you know, he wanted a sort of a private death. He wanted a private sort of burial. He loved Traveler's Rest, and he just wanted to stay here.
Right.
So I think they had a real good point, don't you?
I think this is where he wanted to be. I have to agree.
I think so. It's a beautiful place.
It is. Very nice. Just the place he would have liked.
Oh, I think so. Well, let's go to Danville.
Okay.